Hello YouTubes, it's another DCC conversion video. This one's a wee bit different though because I want to show that it's possible to get into DCC without breaking the bank. For example, this is a Athearn Blue Box $20 locomotive from a train show, and this is a $20 to $25 budget DCC decoder. Now I will also be making this video as basic and simple to follow as possible, just to show that it's not rocket surgery or science. It's extremely important when you're doing a DCC install or conversion that your patient is running as well as it can possibly run. There's no point adding a decoder to something and then try to figure out why it's suddenly not working on the track. If it was working on the track before you converted it, it should work once you convert it. Right, let's get into it. The older Athearn Blue Boxes like this are extremely easy to get into because these shells have been on and off so many times. There's 4 clips at the bottom which are usually loose by now, and you can kind of just wiggle it and pull the shell and it'll just come off just like that. And generally there is, well, always on an original Athearn Blue Box, there are no wires whatsoever. It's a really clever design. However, we're going to ruin that clever design by adding lots of wires. Well, not a huge amount of wires. We're going to be using 7 wires for this whole process, okay? I'll give you a very brief rundown on what DC is compared to DCC. On a DC loco like this, the power is picked up from the left rail and the right rail. It gets fed straight into the motor. So when you turn the volume up on your controller, it goes fast. When you turn it down, it goes slow. When you hit reverse, it goes backwards, and that's your three functions: forward, back, and speed. With DCC, you can control acceleration, you can control direction, and you can have multiple locomotives on the same track at the same time going in different directions, which can be quite dangerous if they're running towards each other. You've also got the option for different types of lights that you can switch on and off. Can't do that with DC. Your lights are basically on all the time, or not if you don't have any. You've also got extra lights like ditch lights, and then of course you've got sound. So there's a lot you can do with DCC that you just can't do with DC. Did I get that right? I think so. Right, let's get started. We need to tear this thing down a little bit. What we're going to do is we're going to intercept the power coming from the rail pickups that goes into the motor. So the power will be coming from the rails as normal, but it will then go into your decoder, like this little guy for example, and then it will come back out the decoder. Once the decoder's sent the correct signal for speed and lights and all that kind of thing, then those wires go into the motor. The problem that Athearn Blue Box have is they pick up the negative of the motor directly from the chassis, so we need to get the motor off, isolate it from the chassis, and then put the motor back in. The problem there is these yellow things down here, well, they used to be white, so they're a bit worn, so we might have to replace them. You can buy those motor mounts. They look kind of like this. These are 3D printed, cost me virtually nothing, but they are solid plastic. The proper ones are kind of rubbery, and you can get them from your hobby store. Okay, let's get into this and see. We don't need this bar anymore. This bar here connects the front right and the rear right rail pickups, if you like, along this bar here, and then it feeds to the top of the motor. So that would be a direct power feed from the right rails into the top of the motor. As we discussed, we don't want to do that, so we can remove that. We also won't be using this little light, and it picks up its power from there for the, let's see, that's a positive and that's a negative, and as you can see it's attached to the chassis, so we don't need that anymore. Let's remove that. Lovely. Next thing I want to do is get the motor out. It's usually easier to remove your trucks first. There's a clip in the Athearns just around here. You get a wee screwdriver up through there. Underneath, lever it. Keep your finger on the top because those things like to run away. Pop that off. Remove your worm gear. And that will pop out. Do the same with the front. Screwdriver in there. remove that clip, lift that up, worm gear out, that one's ready to drop out. And that's all there is to get the trucks off. So now we need to get the motor out. If you really want to hold on to your mount, your rubber mount pads, you need to be careful because they can just explode. I like to push them out with a Robertson screwdriver, which looks like this. It's a Canadian thing. So it's a square tip, so it's not like a Phillips. You're not going to spread the motor mount apart and destroy it. Although, as I say, these are probably going to explode. But we will try not to do that. So you want to force this through. Oh, I can feel it crunchy already. Look, it's crunching. So I don't think we're... Oh, it just fell out. Oh, we might be okay actually. That's interesting. Although they're a bit... You know what? These used to be rubbery, but they're pretty much as hard and crispy as these new 3D printed ones. So I'll probably just use the new ones because I know they'll be nice and tight. However, if they're in good condition, put them aside. You can use them again. Right, moving on to the next step, which is isolating the motor and what actually makes it connect in the first place. This copper strip here, as you can see, it's got bits that stick out, jaggy bits there, right? They reach down and touch that little silver strip and pick up the left rail power. So we don't want that to happen anymore. So what we're going to do is remove that, and you can either just cut them off, or you can remove that and swap it with the top one, which is nice and flat and smooth. But what you always really want to do is make sure there's no danger of anything from that motor touching the chassis. So I like to put a little bit of tape along that little silver bit there. You can use whatever colour you want. I just happen to have some green tape handy, so that's what I'm putting down there. Just like that. Now, before we swap these over, there is something that I want to inform you of before we do that. And that would be, we need to attach a wire that goes into the decoder. Well, technically it's coming from the decoder to power the negative of the motor, and it's going to attach here. We don't want to attach it to the very bottom because then it might reach down and short it out. So what we want to do is remove this, solder a little grey wire, I'll explain why it needs to be grey later, to the very end, and then we can feed that up once the motor's back in place. So we want to remove this. Remember, keep your finger over the top because there's a spring in there and you don't want to lose that. Lever that up. This little clip can only go on one way. See how there's a hook there, but there's an S shape there. That's because the S shape clips over the spring side. Put that to the side. Remove your spring. You might want to shake your little bush out so we don't lose that. While we're at it then, we can remove the top one. Same way. Keep your finger over the top. Put that to the side, spring out, brush out. So we can get this into a little clamp, solder a little bit of grey wire on it, and we'll be ready to reinstall this and get it back into the chassis. So I like to give this little thing a bit of a clean first. You could use a wire brush, I suppose, maybe a wee Dremel. But I usually find that just cleaning it with isopropyl alcohol is enough. Just want to make that connection as nice as possible. So we need to get a bit of flux on the end of that. And we're going to add a blob of solder. Right there. Lovely. Now we need to find a little bit of grey wire. Like this, maybe about 4 or 5 inches, give yourself plenty of room, better too long than too short, and we're going to solder that right onto the end there. Lovely. So that's ready to go back in the motor, and we just need to take care of the top one. We don't need to do this right now, but we'll do it while we're in the mood. So I like to bend these up and then snip them off, because we're not using those wee tangs and they might get in the way, even if they are going on the top. Snip that off. As you can see, that bit of metal flies off, it might go into your eye, so wear eye protection. Snip that one off. That's ready to go back on. Okay, let's reassemble. We shall start with the underside of the motor. So we need our brush back in. Now you will find that it's created a bit of a semicircle in there, so you kind of want to put it back in the same way you took it out, or you're going to have corners. So our brush is in, get our spring in, and get our little contact bar. Remember, hook at one side, you put that little hook on first, clip side last. So that goes over there. Make sure you don't bend your spring. Should look like that. Clip it down. Now sometimes you'll think, well, why is it not clipping down? You notice that the motor's separating there? That's how it's held together. So you need to push them together, and then you can push that down. Like so. So that is ready to go back onto the chassis other than the top. Now I'm going to put the top on temporarily without the spring and without the brush, and that will become apparent later, but for now I just want to keep it together like so, so that when we're wiggling it onto the chassis it doesn't all fall apart. Let's get onto the chassis with our new motor mounts. Now these are not the best motor mounts, but they do the job and they cost almost nothing if you've got a 3D printer or know someone that does have a 3D printer. Slot them in, but what I will say is these are one shot only, because when you try and remove these they usually break, but I print them off in sheets. If you get them in right, they'll be good for a while till you have to remove it. So you do need to be careful with these. They have to go in straight because there's no flex in them whatsoever. So maybe start, instead of doing like those two at once, maybe start with the back two if possible, and then at least they'll be kind of lined up for the fronts. It's a wee bit fiddly without the flex, but you can do it. So I've got the back two in. The front two should now clip in as well. Like so. Oh, almost. Oh, my drive. Look at this. I've got a troublesome drive shaft in the way. You don't want to be breaking that. Make sure that's straight. Now it should clip in. Lovely. So nice and solid, which you might not want. If you want a bit of flex, might make it a wee bit noisy, but I prefer it nice and firm. It's not going anywhere. Okay, what is next, I hear you ask? Well, we have got some work to do on our trucks. Not to work per se, but we do want to prep them for the next stage, which is the wiring. So the right rail pickup comes through the wheels, goes along this bar and up onto this bar. Same with that one, and that bar I showed you earlier connects them, and normally it would hit the top of that to provide the positive power for the motor, but we're not going to be doing that, so we need to connect some wires between these two and then to the decoder. So for now all I'm going to do is put a blob of solder on there, blob of solder on there, then we can reinstall them and then they'll be ready for wiring up. But just while I'm at it with this, just to let you know where the power comes from the left rail normally. The left side goes along this bar, well, through the wheels, along this bar and onto that flat section with a hole in it. That hole there lines up with that pin there, and that is where the left rail gets its pickup. So once that is in there, this side is touching the frame, the whole frame becomes the left rail pickup basically. Okay, and that is going to remain the case for this install because I do want to make it kind of simple. So for the right rail, we'll be getting the power from those two. From the left rail, we're getting our power still from the chassis, but we're going to take a feed from this bit right at the front. So I'm going to put a blob of solder on that, blob of solder there and there. Now we can get our trucks back in. So we can hook this under here. And it does matter which way round these go. If you were to put these round like this, then your loco is going to run in reverse. So always remember that's important. Nearly forgot. Had them around the wrong way after my lecture. Okay, let's get these back in. So remember that pin there locates in there, or that hole locates in that pin. That's a left rail pickup, so that's important. We get a worm gear in. And our clip. Let's get the other side in, exactly the same. Worm gear in and clip. Lovely. I like how chunky and robust the Athearn blue boxes are. Just absolute genius design. So we are done with the chassis and the motor. Next step will be the decoder wiring. So I will go through our decoder wires so you understand why we have so many and which ones we're going to be using or not using. So this is a basic 9-wire decoder, and they generally all have the same colour wires coming out of them. Now I know there's 9 wires, but we are only going to be using 7 of them. I'll tell you what the other 2 are for later, but I will go through the ones we'll be using and what they are actually doing in life. Now you might recognise red and black. Let's start with them. Red, right rail pickup, so that's going to be connecting to the power coming from the right rail. Black, yes, you guessed it, power pickup from the left rail, so that's 2 wires over 7 that we need. Next up we have orange, which is kind of like red. That feeds the positive of the motor. And grey, which is kind of like black, feeds the negative of the motor. Okay, so those 4 wires, the red, the black, the orange and the grey, would actually make your DC locomotive into DCC. The other 3 wires we're using today are for the headlights, front and back. The blue is a positive, and it's the only positive. It's called a common positive, and that will feed the positive wires of your lights or your LEDs, both of them at the same time. And let's pretend that these are negative trigger wires, I like to call them. White is the front headlight negative wire, and the yellow is the rear headlight negative wire. So that's the wires we're using. What about those 2 that we're not using? And we could use them on this decoder, but I have chosen not to today. These are extra function wires, the purple and the green, so we could use both of them as ditch lights, or we could use one of them as maybe a cab light and the other one as possibly a beacon or something like that. And they would also require that blue common to hook up to the positive side of those LEDs. So that all sounds completely confusing, I'm sure, but once I start wiring it up, hopefully it will make sense. So where are we going to mount this thing? Well, I suppose you could just plonk it right in the top there, use some hot glue or tape it onto the top of the motor, which isn't ideal, but that's what I've been doing for a while. It usually works, but you'll notice that all these wires are dangerously close to moving parts. So if you can, try and find yourself someone with a 3D printer or just buy these pre-made. Look, thankfully I've got a 3D printer and I have found these, and I've not used this yet. This is going to be a first just for you guys. This 3D print I think is going to be great, and it even comes with little chambers, if you like, for sugar cube speakers if you want to do a sound install. So let me show you how this fits. It's really clever because I was using this style before, which is fine, but it's a bit chunky and sometimes you can't get your shell down the sides of this. That would basically clip like that, and it is a nice fit, but it's a wee bit wibbly wobbly and there's a danger of that hitting the flywheel. Wait till you see how this one works. I really like it, and this is why I've not put the spring and the brush in there yet. This little thing is ingenious. First, I'm going to remove this top clip, and we will be putting a wire onto this for our orange positive for the motor. But at the moment, we're going to take the clip off. We're going to put our brush in. Remember, orientation, semicircle thing. We'll get that in there. We'll get our spring. And here's the fun part. We put this clip over the top. Remember, there's nothing on the sides holding it on, so how's it going to stay in place? This is where we get our clip again. We hook the clip in the back as normal. Push it down over there and clip it in place, like so. So not only do we have full access to that clip, but the clip is holding in this little platform. I totally love this. I hope it works. And I was just making sure that I've got clearance. There is a sort of semicircle on the underside of this to allow for the flywheel. So I really like this design. Keeps it nice and neat, nice and slim, nothing overhanging the sides. But I digress. We're supposed to be keeping this simple. So that means now we could put our decoder there, which I much prefer, because it's also keeping it nice and shallow, like so. The reason I've got the wires going back the way is I am going to fold them back over this way, something like that. I just don't want all the wires immediately hitting a 90-degree angle as they come up. Not quite sure, you could possibly just mount it there, but we don't have a huge amount of height in this thing. So I am going to stick it right there with some hot glue. Let me do that. Let's get a healthy squodge of glue in there. I like hot glue because it's kind of temporary. You know, if we don't like it, we can always heat it up a little bit and remove it. Oh, that is a healthy squodge indeed. And we will locate that right there. Lovely. Now I'm going to wait for that glue to dry so that it doesn't stick to the side of the Loco, because I do want to do a test fit of the shell just to make sure that none of this platform is protruding into the cab area, because on the underside we do have the window section. As long as it stops before that, then we should be fine. That's the wires I've got ready for the lights. The lights are glued in place. We can do that in a different video. This is really about a decoder install. So I'll bring you back when that glue is set and we'll try the shell on. Okay, that's set. Let's tuck these wires out the way for now, because they are going to live about here anyway. So this will be a good test, and we'll just put a bit of tape over there for now so that we can make sure our shell is going to fit. Now the grey wire that's coming from the negative of the motor, I'm going to feed that up that little gap in here. That's where it's going to come. We get all these wires flattened down for now, tape over there. Make sure the shell's going to go on. If it doesn't go on, then I'm going to have to make a whole new video. Looking good so far. Excellent. We can proceed. It's strangely tighter than it was before we started. I don't quite know what's stopping it from coming out now. That's strange. Probably that glue wasn't set. Nah, we're all good. Oh, I tell you what, I caught a wire on the side. That's what was happening there. Right, we can continue with our wiring. So let's remove this tape and proceed. We'll start with the easy ones, okay? First up, I'm going to connect our motor. So remember that grey wire that was coming up from the bottom of the motor? That's going to connect to the grey wire coming out of the decoder, strangely enough. So let's run that one along here, and you just want to use as little wire as you can. Keep it nice and tidy. At this stage, we've already passed the point of longer is better. Now we just want it as neat as possible. So let's go with, snip that there, and snip the other one just beyond it, because obviously we have to strip strip that, strip that. Want a bit of flux, and we're going to tin them up before we join them. Now I've seen some people, they just twist these wires and then solder them. I don't like the twisting method, I feel that makes it weak. So let me get some solder on these little wires, then we'll get some heat shrink tubing over them, or over one side, and then we'll join them together. Again, I'm just going to trim these down because we don't need too much wire going on in there. Right, we're going to join these together. Heat shrink over the top. Get a little claw in the action. And get these joined together. Like so. Here, heat shrink over. If you've got room, you could use a lighter, but I find that the heat coming from the soldering iron is plenty. Just don't touch your fingers with it. That one's done. So now it is time for our positive of the motor, which is the orange wire coming from the decoder. So let's get a blob of solder on there first, right there. You don't want to go too mad with the heat because you're over plastic. That'll be plenty. Let's trim our little orange wire down. Strip that down. Tin that up. And get it soldered to its blob. Top of the motor, positive power, orange wire, done. Lovely. So that's the positive and negative coming from the decoder into the motor. So let's take care of our right rail, left rail wires, which will be red and the black from the decoder going to the right and the left rails. Make sure your loco's facing the right way. Normally, but not always, the commutator faces forward, but not always. So make sure you check that before you remove the shell or remove the motor. Just check that, okay? Right, let's go on with it because we need to connect those two with a red wire, combining into this red wire. Alright. Now we don't get a huge amount of wires with these cheapy decoders. Normally you get twice as long wires because normally I would snip this one maybe a bit there and then take this section, attach it to there, join those two together and go all the way to the front. But I don't think I've got enough room to do that, which is unfortunate. So I need to get another bit of red wire from a previous project. I don't need much, so don't panic. It doesn't even need to be red, but it makes life easier if you just use red. So I have some red wires here. My plan is to, let's see. Yeah, let's cut that one there. And hopefully we'll be able to join that one to there. Add this one to there, join them together. Yeah, that should be fine. So that one's going to get attached to there, join together with that one, and then carry on to the front. So we'll get this one on first. Right rail pickup. Lovely. It's going to join on with the other red wire, the one that's going into the decoder. So we need to snip that one there. Going to strip those two. I'm going to twist these together for now. I know I just said I didn't like twisting wires, but I'm only twisting it. No, no excuses. No, just ignore everything I said previously. Twisting's fine. So those ones are now joined. but now we have to get them connected to the front wire, pickup, rail. That wire should be long enough. You need to leave enough room for flex. Yep, that one should be fine. So strip that one. Turn that up. Might as well do the other side while we're here. Right, we'll get a bit of wire on the front right pickup. Nice healthy solder. We'll get another bit of heat shrink tubing. Slide that over first, always. Get a little crocodile clip. Join these together. Again, they're just a little bit on the long side. Not that you can see because I've not angled the camera. It's better. Snip these down just a little bit. Join them together. Just making sure my heat shrink was on. They're joined. Heat shrink over. Get that shrunk down. So that is our right rail pickups joined together, and then there's a feed from both of the right rail pickups going into the decoder. So let me do exactly the same with the black wire, which is a left rail pickup. Just kidding, it's not exactly the same because we don't have those two things on the left side. Okay, we are going to extend this black wire all the way to the front because, as we discussed before, the chassis, the whole of the chassis is a left rail pickup. So I need to connect this black wire all the way to the front, but as you can see, it's not long enough. Wap, wap, wah. So we just need to find a little bit of black wire to extend that. Wouldn't it have been great if I'd mounted the decoder up there instead, but I don't think we've got the height there because it does sit higher. So let me get a bit of wire, connect this one, make it longer, attach it to the front, okay? So that's our pickup wires and our motor wires done. Technically, this is now a DCC locomotive other than the lights. Again, two right rail pickups, come in here, go into the decoder. Left rail pickup is the chassis, comes along this black wire into the decoder. Orange wire comes out of the decoder into the positive of the motor. Grey wire, negative, coming from the decoder into the negative of the motor. So if you don't intend to add lights, then you're good to go. So how about we take this to the track, make sure it works, and then you can just switch off because you know how to do it now. Otherwise, wait, I'll come back, I'll wire up the lights. There's only 3 wires left anyway. Now, as far as I'm aware, all new decoders are set to address number 3 by default. So if we look up address number 3, and hit the go button, then we should go. Right, forward please, which should be left. Oh, super smooth. That's why it was important to make sure your local worked first before you started this. I also think this is actually quieter than it was when it was just DC power. So that seems to work absolutely fine. If that's all you wanted from the video, then skip to the end and watch the parade lap. Otherwise, I'll see you back at the bench. So happy that worked. Okay, let's get on with the final wiring. There's only 3 left for the lights. And if you were paying attention, you will know what those 3 wires are. We have our blue common positive. So as you can see, I've got 2 blue wires. They come from the front positive LED and the rear of the positive LED. We have our yellow negative coming from the rear LED and our white negative coming from the front LED. So Although there's 4 wires, technically there's only 3 because we've joined the 2 blues together. The blues would actually attach to our red wire in the LEDs, but I have thought ahead. As you can see down there, we have our normal black and red wires for the positive and negative of LEDs, but this just makes life easier. Okay, so let's bring our patient back in. We're not going to be using the green at the moment, but we might use it in the future, so I'm not going to snip that down. We're not using our purple at the moment. Again, might use it in the future because I would quite like some little marker lights on this. So they can go out the way for now, and that leaves us with these 3 wires. So it's really just a simple process of joining the right colour to the right colour. So let me do that quickly. So that's all our wiring done. Just need to tidy it up a bit and get the shell back on. Oh, and a coupler or 2. Okay, let's see what we can do with this monstrosity. Out of sight and out of mind and all that, you know. So we do want the black wire not fouling anything. That's the one coming from the left rail pickup, way up the front there. I want the green and the purple out the way, but I don't want to cut them down in case I use them. I think everything is going to get taped along the middle. You know what, I'm just going to snip off the ends of the purple and the green because they are stripped a little bit. The insulation is stripped off and I don't want them making contact with anything, so that's important to remember. And let's get all our wires in a nice little bundle right there. Don't think I've created any more height or nothing that's going to make a difference in the world. But I do not want wires hanging off the sides and jamming the shell as it goes on, so that looks pretty neat there. There's not a whole lot we can do with the wires going into the shell. Right, let me grab a bit of tape, secure that over the top, round. That looks relatively neat, things are still moving. Just hope that these wires going into the shell will just find their homes in the roof. Again, making sure nothing's fouling as we go down. But don't go all the way because we need to get the coupler on, and it's annoying because the old Athearns have got those little plastic clip things which they're just so annoying, and I can never remember which way around they go. I think that longer section goes in towards the loco. 50-50 chance I'll probably get it wrong. I'm sure they thought this was a great idea at the time. Oh my goodness, I actually got it right. Look at that. Not the best design, but it will work for now until I come up with something better. So everything's still intact, nothing hanging out. We should be able to clip this down. Definitely stiffer than it was, but I think it's just hitting that tape on the sides, believe it or not. That's how little room we've got at the side of these, and that's why we can't use that mount. But that's looking good. Truck smooth, truck smooth. I think we're done. time to hit the tracks for a full test.
Okay, here we go then. Now, I did preset some CV settings earlier on when it was on the track, so acceleration, deceleration should be nice, but let's start with the lights. Lovely. As you can see, I fitted it with the soft white LEDs. The back one should not be on at the moment because it's in forward. If I hit change direction, that one should come on, which it does. Lovely jubbly. Change it to forward. Let's see how smooth it can be. So that is the crawl. That's as slow as it will go, which is pretty good. Try to keep my hands steady. But yeah, that's pretty good for an Athearn. A little bit faster. We'll hit the change direction button now. You'll see the gradual slow down. Back light comes on, off it goes. Lovely. Change direction again. Excellent. Right, let's go for a wee blast around the track, shall we? Take it up to speed step 54, just because that's where the dial stopped. Oh, he's off. I better get after it. So it's never going to be silent because it's an Athearn Blue Box after all. As long as it's smooth. And once we've got once we've got freight behind it, you probably won't even notice the grinding rumble noise that you get from an Athearn Blue Box. Needs a bit of detail. Doesn't even have a horn fitted at the moment. And I can paint the handrails where they're supposed to be painted and the colours, and oh, I'm delighted with that. What a great little loco. Fantastic. Great success. So there you go. DCC Loco for under $50. Now obviously you're going to need some tools, soldering iron, wires, bulbs, but with regards to tools, you should probably have them by now if you're going to be working on trains. And the likes of the bulbs, they are so cheap. Honestly, you can get a pack of 100 for like $10. That it really is not the end of the world. And generally you will have extra wire from other decoder installs. Trust me, you'll know what I mean when you start getting into this. But hopefully that was as simple as I could possibly make it. If there's anything I missed, by all means leave a comment, let me know. Meanwhile, time for the parade lap. We're calling it the parade lap now, not the victory lap. Should maybe call it the victory lap, the victory parade lap. Anyway, take care. Hope that helped someone. See you soon.